Black Myth Wukong is an odd type of game, because it's brutally difficult and has a dark, oppressive tone, but it's also eye-meltingly gorgeous. There are two types of difficult games, ones that want you to beat them and ones that want to torture you until your controller snaps. How one tells those types of games apart comes from either the visual or narrative elements of the game. Take Celeste, for example, a tough-as-nails 2D platformer with a vibrant colour scheme and an inspiring story about overcoming strife. It desperately wants you to beat it. In contrast to Dark Souls, where the world has already been destroyed and is smeared in sullen, depressing colours, your quest is about saving this dying world for people who no longer live in it. This morose tone is meant to discourage the player, relentlessly abusing them with punishing challenges while they fight for a fruitless goal. Black Myth falls somewhere in between the two, which makes the game a unique tonal experience in the difficult games subgenre. The tone is undoubtedly bleak, the story features depressing turns at every corner, and the world feels empty except for the legions of Yao Guai we face on our journey. Of course, we know from Journey to the West that this isn't true. There are several kingdoms with a rich sense of life and community, but Black Myth purposefully excludes any settlements to make the game feel isolating and like you don't have much assistance on your quest. Many Souls games use the same tactic, making the world feel empty except for the brutal monsters that stand in your way. They purposely try to make the world feel like it's not worth saving, and ask the player to dig deep to find the resolve to continue. But where Black Myth sets itself apart is in its world, and just how celestially gorgeous Asia is represented, with an overpoweringly vibrant colour palette that exudes a sense of mystical beauty and tranquility, with a lush, breathing world for the Destined One to traverse. The variety in the beauty is also spectacular. Whereas contemporaries would have dozens of variations on decrepit, rotten castles and caves, Wukong takes us on a full Super Mario game's worth of biomes, starting with grass, then going to desert, snow, and eventually fire. Even with this assortment of locales to choose from, Black Myth is still able to maintain a constant serious tone. This never feels like a fantastic journey for your dreams. The world still has a foreboding sense of hostility to it, despite the Yao Guai being essentially demons. The first area especially has almost a tranquil sense to it. The peaceful whistle of the trees is sharply contrasted by the vicious enemies that stand in your way. A magnificent example of this is the boss fight against the white-clad noble, whom you battle on a still pond, with the water rupturing with every blow in the high-speed battle. The culmination of the same chapter is set before an inflamed pagoda. This is to match the larger-than-life boss you face in this arena. The game is appropriately bursting with colour and intensity during this climactic moment. Where other Souls-like seek to disgust and ward off the player, Black Myth Wukong is intent on dazzling them with the full beauty and variety of their gorgeous home country, and this attention to refinement extends to the enemies as well. This is where I do have to praise Dark Souls' art direction in comparison to Black Myth's. What better way to represent a brutally difficult opponent than making them an example of grotesque body horror that oozes with decay and rot? Black Myth's bosses have a more mythological design, each inspired by Chinese folklore. There are scant few I'd describe as straight up disgusting, but there are several that are unnerving. For example, Captain Y's voice is a deeply strange deer-like creature with an almost alien design that we battle in a darkened room. It creates the same feeling of unease I get from other difficult boss fights, but with an artistic direction that isn't revolting to look at. Instead, the regal beauty of some of these bosses indicate a great sense of pride they have in themselves, which translates into power and how overconfident they are in their ability to crush you. This gives Black Myth a far more cinematic flair, as these battles come across as us taking down mighty monsters of mythology in a grand and explosive duel. I think this might also tie into how Black Myth has no block mechanic. With disgusting monsters like the one from Dark Souls, humanity's natural instinct is to hide and protect ourselves from the repulsive monsters that live in our imaginations, so blocking is the optimal tactic in those games. But the fact that Black Myth makes it impossible to withstand an attack communicates how powerful our foes are in this game. They're saying that we would need some kind of mythological shield to be able to withstand these attacks, not some rusted shield we found in a chest. Game science are making us respect their bosses by not letting us cower from them and holding up a shield to defend. Instead, much like Sekiro, we have no choice but to learn the timings behind enemy attacks so we can correctly respond to them. I'm a much bigger fan of Black Myth's art style in regards to difficulty, and not making the player want to surrender to the impressive tone, but create a sense of power and refinement to the world, and not making us afraid or disgusted by it, but making us respect it. I'll be back in 2 days. In the meantime, here's a video about the games that make up the components of Black Myth Wukong.